Hey everybody, I want to introduce you to our next project, and this one should be relatively simple, but you never know. So this is called a Country Belle, and it's made by a company called Guild, and it's basically a telephone case that is a radio. And on the side here there's supposed to be a crank. We'll have to figure out how we're going to handle that. There's a volume and a tone, and it's an AM/FM radio. These were made in 1955. You know, I don't even know what's inside. I haven't looked at it yet. I assume it's probably going to be a 9-pin tube deal, which was kind of customary in the late 40s and 50s. And I don't even know what it looks like. I'm going to pull the schematic. Looking at the case itself, the condition is fairly good. The decals are still intact. Right here it says the Country Belle. Right here it says by Guild, and on the side you got your volume, tone, and your station. This mouthpiece here is broken. I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to handle that. And on this side of the radio there's a little earpiece, and it's on a receiver that's spring-loaded, so I have to assume that may be how you turn the radio on. Don't really know yet. We'll figure that out as we go along. Looks like someone may have worked on this, but it does have the 2-prong cord, and we'll have to see how that goes. But we're going to rip this thing open, and we'll see what it looks like. So let me go do that, and I will be right back, and we'll walk through the schematic. Okay, I decided we're going to open this thing up for the first time together. Why not? This way you could see what I see for the first time. I know some of you have probably worked on these. I think our friend Brendan told me that he did one of these a while back and gave it to somebody who's still using it. And if I can get it to work, I'm going to use it too, because it's a nice FM radio. And why not? So first thing we're going to do is take the 4 screws off. There's 2 here and 2 back here. And let's lift up. These pieces are not connected to the radio. They're just decorative. Let's see what we got. And as I suspected, it's the small tubes. First thing we're going to do whenever you work on a radio, for those of you that are new, I'm going to put the screws back so we don't lose them, right? Always put the screws back. This looks like it's going to be a relatively simple radio to work on. That's always a good sign. Okay, there's our screws. And the thing about this radio is the notorious problem these things have with the case. The case generally separates, but this one seems to be very, very solid and intact, which is really good. All right, we're going to put this aside for now. Let's see what we have in here. Obviously, there's no transformer. We've got a filter cap. 50 microfarad, 150 volts, so there's a pair of 50s. These tubes, we'll look at the schematic at those in a moment. We have a nice small tuning cap. Very different than my other one, and this does look like a switch right here. This is the receiver, and this screw is floating around here. And we've got this this kind of coil antenna. That's the FM antenna. I think we're gonna go brave on this one and try to do a power up on the Variac. I don't see any distress here, and it almost looks like it hasn't been used much. So we'll be brave today. Now this is a hot transformer, which means there's a 2-prong plug. I mean a hot chassis. There's a 2-prong plug, and depending on how you plug this in, you can get a nice little shock from this thing. So we're going to avoid that. We're not going to touch that chassis at all. Okay, that should suffice. Now let's turn on some power. Okay. Now I don't know if this means it's on or off. We'll find out. Let's go up slow. I see, I think I just saw a tube kind of light up at the bottom. That can't be good. Right down here. So I may have a bad tube. I do see some glow over here. We're at 100 volts.
You know, it's a slim majority in the Senate. Yeah, all three branches of government.
Check that out.
We still.
November the 6th, I need you to do everything that you can because we want to share with.
What I don't see, you know, actually this looks like it's just an AM radio. I don't see a way to change from AM to FM.
That they promised on the
This is just an AM radio. Okay, good.
Celebrating what obviously did something in the.
Sounds good, actually. There's the tone. Let's see what this receiver handle does. Doesn't look like it does anything. Looks like it's supposed to be a power switch, but it's not working. It's not adjusted correctly. Interesting.
Be able to cover using, but one player's complete.
More quirky, non-negotiable.
Well,
this is Abe here. I'm hosting the Hamilton Corner. I'm joined by Walter Wildman.
I don't see a way to turn the radio off currently.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, and we wanted to have you.
The volume switch is not a volume on-off switch. So I'm going to guess it has to do with this part right here. There it is. So when you have the receiver on there, it turns the radio off, and when you lift the receiver up, the radio comes on. I guess that's why they give you that little shelf in the front to put the receiver on. Cool.
You're absolutely right. The most important.
Cool. All right, let's turn the Variac off. All right, so this one should be a fairly simple project. I don't see anything major here. I am going to have to replace this filter cap. I'm sure that filter cap is probably bad or close to being bad, so why leave it in there? We've got it powered off. I'm going to need to adjust this this switch here because it clearly doesn't work well. It looks like there's an adjustment screw here that's flopping in the breeze, so we're going to have to take a look at that. We'll test all the tubes, make sure the tubes are good. I did see this tube light up in an unusual way when I first powered it up, so I want to check that one. And I think we're going to have ourselves a pretty simple project. The other part of this is going to be cleaning the cabinet up. I'm not going to refinish it because I've got all the decals on there and it's in great shape. And there's just a couple of spots there that have to be looked at. And I notice on the speaker they have clip leads here for the speaker. It's not soldered. That's more in line with a modern radio like this. And it's nice to have a small tuning cap compared to what I had with my Crossley, right? Nice little small cap there. So so we'll do that. We'll rip the chassis out and we'll take a look underneath and see what's going on in there. And I just want to do some documentation and understand what kind of caps we have underneath that I have to change. And then we'll put this thing in operation. I'm gonna definitely hang this on the wall and use it. This is not something that I have to worry about. I will put a 3-prong cord on it, obviously, so we don't have to worry about the hot chassis. But I think we're going to have ourselves a pretty simple project here. So I better start thinking about what's next, right? On the Crossley 124 playtime clock that I'm working on, I've put the new speaker grill cloth on. That's done. I'm in the process of doing some cabinet work. There's a shelf that the radio sits on that it just fell apart, so I've rebuilt it. It's gluing right now and setting. I've cleaned the outside of the cabinet. I've also polished it with Old English and with some Pledge, and that looks really, really good. And once I get that in good shape, the last step is going to be to align the radio, mount it, and then fix the clock. Now the clock has a Hammond Type C synchronous motor, and the motor is sticky. If you heat it up, it works. If it cools off, it doesn't work. And it's one of those manual start clocks. Now, I was going to invest the time to fix it, but then I thought about it and said, that thing is so old, I wouldn't want to leave it running all the time anyway. So I found a Type C clock movement, which will be true to the design. I'm not going to butcher the cabinet. But I'll be able to use, it's a synchronous motor, but it's a direct drive and it's new. And I will use that as the clock, and I'll preserve the parts from the original one just to keep it intact. Because I do plan on using the clock on this thing. I'm not going to keep the radio plugged in. I'm going to have 2 separate controls there, because obviously a tube radio you never leave plugged in all the time. And for those of you that are new to the hobby, remember that. Any type of tube radio like this, you never leave plugged in. Only plug it in when you're going to use it. You don't want to leave those things there because they just, from an electronic perspective, they're just not safe, just to put it bluntly. So you always want to unplug that stuff when you're not using it. So we'll get to work on this in our next episode. I'll have the chassis out. We'll take a peek underneath, see what's going on, and we'll walk through the schematic. I'm not going to do that on this one. This will just be a short introductory video of our next project. And by the way, I did find another radio like this that was in poor shape according to the seller, but it has the parts that look really good, like this receiver and the horn on the front. So I picked that up for $19 on eBay, and I'm waiting for that to get here. So I do have spare parts for the cosmetic things, but this looks like it's steampunk cast metal, possibly. But you could see here it's chipped and broken and looks like it's been thrown on the floor a few times. So we'll see what we could do with that, just to make it look good at the end of the day. All right, and again, I don't know why I thought this thing was FM, but it's not. So I'm okay with that. That's cool. All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon, and I will see you in the next video. So this is the Country Belle.